Here's your host, Alex Garrett.
Well, firstly, here on Alex Garrett Podcasting, I just want to direct you to a revamped, if you will, website, alexgnyc.com, alexgnyc.com. Of course, you can always find me at alexgnyc.com. But yeah, I've got a revamped site, and it pretty much lists all my podcasts first. Then you can find out more about yours truly, and then you can find out about the podcast Adapting with Alex Garrett, which we're adding to tomorrow and a few days in a row here. You'll have to figure out, you'll have to find out with me as we keep on plugging here on Alex Garrett Podcasting and keep on providing more episodes and more episodes by the day, it feels like. So, what's got me going today? All right, the retirement by Tom Brady. I'm going to get to that on Fanatics Friday, so you'll have to wait for that Fanatics Friday episode about Brady, about the career, and about the Flores lawsuit. I've got a lot of thoughts on that, but we've got news to get to here on Alex Garrett Podcasting. So on Friday, we had the emotional farewell, the whole city did, for police officer Jason Rivera. Tomorrow, we have another emotional farewell for his colleague, Wilbert Mora, who was also shot on the scene in the Bronx. It was horrible. The suspect died, but he did shoot to death Officer Mora and Officer Rivera. 22-year-old Rivera, 27-year-old Mora. And after this emotional farewell to these cops will have come and gone, what is the best thank you New York City could say to the cops in the ranks right now, saying we have their back? Get vaccinated, or by February 11th, you're fired. That's right. Thanks so much, NYPD. We're going to back the blue. Really? Really, New York City? Or are you going to vax the blue? Are you going to back the blue, or will you demand vax the blue? I think that deadline should be extended for the NYPD. They are going through so much grief right now. So much grief. And now you're putting it over their head to get vaccinated or be fired by February 11th. At least give an extension to the NYPD, to the rank and file, to those that are working hard to protect the city. And I would hope maybe pick up the vax or test, weekly testing. But after the emotional farewell, the city shutting down, rightfully so. After an actress getting fired for speaking out about the funeral. Stupidly so. I thought this city was going to really have the NYPD, the people in blue, men and women in blue, their backs. But 2 days after that emotional farewell, they say get vaxxed or be fired. Awful timing, New York City. Awful timing. You have a department that is reeling. You have a department that's now being asked to live in the city, possibly be required to do so. And now you have a city, an NYPD, that's being told if you don't vaccinate, you will be fired. Now, I am for vaccination, 100%. I'm triple vaccinated. But I will be honest with you. I'm very much against terminating those who will not get it. There has to be some compromise. Especially for an NYPD that's currently reeling, that will have to, unfortunately, remember one of their own, because the anti-cop rhetoric mixed with the gun violence is rampant right now in the city. And we have to contain both of them. We have to contain the anti-cop rhetoric, and we have to contain the gun violence. But we cannot just say it's gun violence alone. There's an anti-cop sentiment still. An anti-law sentiment still. That we must fix. And, Mayor Giuliani was a staunch supporter of the NYPD, a staunch advocate for cracking down on crime, whether you liked it or not. He was. And as wild and as off the charts he might have looked during this whole 2020 election fraud narrative that the President Trump at the time was trying to push. According to the New York Times, in an article saying that President Trump was more involved with removing voting machines that didn't vote, that had non-vote, that didn't have votes for him, utilizing the Justice Department, going so far as to ask states to do so. Well, Mayor Giuliani in the Oval Office said, this is not right. This is, he pushed back. And rightfully so. I don't know why he kept pushing the election fraud narrative to the ellipsis, all the way to the ellipsis, but he did. And you have to fault him for that. But at least, behind closed doors, the mayor, in a time where he looked terribly off the wall, stuck to common sense and said the military should not go in and should not seize the ballot box, President Trump. Even former NYPD Commissioner Bernie Kerik saw the same thing. Again, why they peddled to January 6th all the way up to that, I don't know. But I do know that at least they had sense to tell the president, no, you will not confiscate the machines. So that gives me a little hope, a little hope that Mayor Giuliani has sensibility about him 20 years after getting us through 9/11. Because the nonsensible current city we're in buries two of their own in 2 weeks. And the best they could say to the cops is, hey, you better vaccinate or you'll be fired on February 11th. So I'm going to use this podcast tonight, to say, Mayor Adams, Department of Health, extend that termination deadline to honor the fact that our cops are grieving these horrible losses. Extend that deadline. Then you will really be for the cops. Quite frankly, I guess the city will fire who they will, but the timeline should be changed. Of course, this includes all city workforce. So you're going to have a lot of firings of police, firefighters, and other New York City employees. The city workers staring down next month's cutoff was to be given notice by Monday. There are two groups that this February 11th deadline applies to, according to NBC4 New York. New hires who have not submitted proof of a second vaccine, and unvaccinated employees that are currently on unpaid leave who did not request to continue receiving health benefits past June. My number one job is to keep the city safe. That includes getting New York City vaccinated. More than 90% of employees are fully vaccinated, and that number is increasing every day. So use the testing or VAXX system, Mayor Adams. Do that too. Anybody in the city workforce hired after August 2nd, 2021 needed a full vaccination series as a condition of their employment, given 45 days to do so. A 1,000 new hires have not met this requirement. 3,000 on leave without pay or do not remain on health benefits are the number of unvaccinated in that other group. But to the NYPD, I plead you for the morale of the work of the NYPD during this time. Extend the date of termination time to somewhere else in February, later in February, to get not only them, but us as a city through the grief period of losing Officers Rivera and Mora. Please do that. And if this podcast can influence that, I don't know where we go next. But I pray that maybe, just maybe, advocating for the extension of of the deadline to get vaccinated will maybe lessen the stress that's currently going on in the NYPD. To have a safe city, Mayor Adams, you have to have a morale-lifted NYPD. And so including them in this deadline does not make sense. Extend the deadline of vaccinated requirement to beyond February 11th. Because for the second week in a row, the NYPD will have to bury their own. You say your number one job is to keep the city safe, Mayor Adams. Is that right? Then make sure the NYPD morale is at a level that they can be motivated to keep us safe and not call out sick and not get vaccinated. You want to keep the city safe? You want to keep morale high at the NYPD? Stop putting stresses on them. Aside from the fact that they're fearing for their lives now after these 2 losses, and then they're grieving for these 2 losses, now vaccination mandate is over their head? That's got to change quick. That's why I want to speak out. It's February 1st. 10 days. Extend the deadline to beyond February 11th to accommodate a grieving NYPD. And that will truly help us keep the city safe, because they'll have a better morale for the NYPD, who will want to go to work and keep us safe. And then they'll maybe want to get the vaccination too. You don't push it on them. You let them come to that decision on their own. So extend the date of termination from February 11th to sometime later in February, when our city's grieving period for these officers has healed to the best it can, and to where they feel confident in getting back on the field to protect us each and every night and day in New York City. That's all I'm asking for on this podcast tonight. You can read about it, alexgnyc.com, back the blue or vax the blue. That was my big question. For now, I'm Alex Garrett. We got some great interviews coming up this week, so stay tuned all week long on Alex Garrett Podcasting, where we're always adapting. Adapt to the grief, New York City, and extend the deadline of this mandate to fire city workers, at least for the NYPD.